is concerned that the Gulf War will increase racial tensions.
There are around 5 million Muslims in France, predominantly from the countries of North Africa. Many are unemployed. Many too complain of racial discrimination. And some have come to identify with Saddam Hussein as a champion of oppressed Arabs everywhere.
Saddam
Hussein is courageous, this man said. He won't give in to anything. Saddam Hussein believes in God, said another. God's victory will come one day. The French government's just banned this Algerian video. The song calls on all Arabs to rally round Saddam, and it had sold well in Muslim areas in France. It's the kind of thing which could turn many more people against the Arab community.
They are seen by the French society as the enemy, and turning things into the West, the Christian West against the Muslim Arab world is taking place not only in France, but by Iraq itself and by some other Arab countries and Arab communities, that this is leading the French to perceive the Arab community here as part of this enemy.
Some community leaders have called on Muslims in France not to inflame the situation.
It's important to us not to have French public opinion seeing us as a fifth column. We are French citizens.
But tonight again, the police have been out in force as young Muslims mixed with peace protesters. Racial tensions were among the government's worries even before the Gulf crisis started. Now they're afraid they'll get a great deal worse. As the war goes on, the French government seems liable to alienate its Muslim community more and more. David Walter, BBC News, Paris.
Here, the Prime Minister John Major has said that Saddam Hussein may yet become a target for his own people. In the Commons, he described him as amoral, a man without pity. Turning to the cost of the war, Mr. Major called on countries who haven't sent troops to the Gulf to make bigger financial contributions.
The political debate today produced comments from 3 ministers, including John Major, on the costs of the Gulf War. The issue was, how much are the industrialized nations which are not fighting going to contribute in money and supplies to those which are?
And could he also report to the House as well as that what success he has had in securing support from other countries, and in particular Germany, which by treaty is incapable of participating in this exercise, and Japan, which by dint of its wealth and its interest in oil has more than a right to make contributions not only to the United States but to the support of our forces as well.
We are certainly, if I may deal with that last point, seeking the maximum contributions from those who for one reason or another have not felt able to make military contributions to the Allied effort, to see that at least they make the maximum financial contribution.
Hard-faced bargaining with the Germans and Japanese is continuing at the G7 conference in New York. The Germans, like the Dutch, are already providing Britain with ammunition and have also given the comparatively small sum of £20 million. The Saudis are covering host country costs, food and fuel, for example. Britain hopes for an international fund which would provide combatants with money according to what they spend and their national wealth. The Chancellor, Norman Lamont, says British forces will get whatever money they need, and he'll just have to adjust his budget and public spending accordingly.
Well, I've just had very preliminary discussions and have simply pointed out to some of my colleagues that the costs of the hostilities in the Gulf are immense for us, that we are doing this on behalf not just of ourselves but of the world, and that for that reason it would be a very good thing if we get some assistance from several other countries. We are already getting some assistance from other countries, but the costs are escalating all the time.
It's impossible to say precisely what Britain's war costs will be, but by the start of the war, £1 billion have been spent. At the end of the financial year in March, it's estimated that figure will have risen to £1.4 billion. The defence budget already provides £500 million. So, at the very least, the shortfall will be £900 million. But the Prime Minister knows this does not cover the potentially much heavier cost of lost equipment and of ammunition used. In the first 4 days, that came to £100 million. The government's frankly disappointed at Europe's contribution to the Gulf War.
There is undoubtedly a considerable disparity in the extent to which individual European countries have committed themselves to the problems of the Gulf. Political union and a common foreign and security policy in Europe would have to go beyond statements and extend to action. Clearly, Europe is not ready for that, and we should not be too ambitious when it comes to the IGC on political union.
The Commons is growing more interested day by day about the future of Saddam Hussein. The Prime Minister used his sharpest words yet on the subject.
I very strongly suspect, I must say to my honourable friend, that he may yet become a target of his own people. It is perfectly clear, I think, that this man is amoral. He takes hostages, he attacks population centres, he threatens prisoners. He's a man without pity, and whatever his fate may be, I, for one, will not weep for him.
With bad news from Israel tonight, Westminster has had its fears confirmed. This war is likely to be even more costly in human suffering than most MPs had expected. What preoccupies many now is not just the freeing of Kuwait, but the final destruction of the Iraqi war machine and, almost inevitably, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein.
Labour's junior social security spokesman Tony Banks has become the third member of his party's front bench team to resign because of its Gulf policy. Mr Banks was one of the 34 Labour MPs who last night voted against a motion supporting the government's policy in the Gulf. Now, to draw together today's news from the Gulf War, our defence correspondent David Shookman joins me to take stock of today's military developments. David, Gavin Ezra in Washington was talking about the practical difficulties Israel would have if they do decide to launch an attack against Iraq, the difficulties of coordination with the Allied aircraft already there. How does that work, and to what extent does Israel actually require almost the permission of the Americans to attack?
Well, I think it does require the permission of the Americans. The Allies have a single coordinated air battle plan of enormous sophistication. They enjoy air superiority over Iraq. Any aircraft entering Iraqi airspace not part of the Allied air plan could be deemed to be suspicious, even hostile, could be shot down. So if the Israelis want to get involved in this, the assessment is, from a number of different sources, that there must be permission, that air corridors must be assigned for the Israeli aircraft to travel through.
What sort of targets do you think would the Israelis go for if they do decide to attack, if indeed the Americans allow them to attack?
Well, their priority, I think, would probably be the mobile Scud launchers, but there is a difficulty here, because Israeli analysts themselves admit that there probably isn't much more they can achieve if the Americans, with RAF help, are trying and failing to find all the Scud launchers. Since we've been on air, I've spoken to a former Israeli intelligence official in Tel Aviv and to an Israeli military correspondent there as well. They both concur in that. They say there probably isn't much the Israeli Air Force can add, except a degree of motivation, since their country is at stake, possibly also additional training. They've had this mobile Scud threat against them for a decade now. They know about it, they've trained for it. That could give them an edge over Allied pilots, but probably on balance it wouldn't. There isn't much else they can do.
Let's look at some of the other developments of the day. A fifth RAF Tornado down, and the RAF commander says they've been unlucky. Is it bad luck, and will it go on?
Well, I think there's always an element of bad luck. If aircraft are struck by anti-aircraft fire, a great deal can be done against anti-aircraft missiles. If they're radar guided, their systems can be knocked out. But unguided anti-aircraft guns fired blindly into the air, especially at night, are a very difficult target to hit and to avoid. And I think there is an element of bad luck, since the Tornadoes have to fly very low over Iraqi air bases. Bad luck that they would get hit. That's a possibility, a reason for their losses. So that's a very hard tactic to change, unless the planes start flying much higher, unless generally Iraqi air bases become less of an important target, now that the emphasis is moving away from that, with the Air Force staying so much on the ground anyway.
David Shookman, thank you. Now, today's other news. In Moscow, President Gorbachev has promised a thorough investigation into the recent bloody events in the Baltic republics. 4 people were killed by police in Latvia on Sunday, and 14 others died in Lithuania 9 days ago when troops stormed a television station.
It was an embattled Mr. Gorbachev who came to the podium with his political career and reputation at stake. He repeated his claims that the Baltic troubles stemmed from the actions of the pro-independence governments, but he denied that the crackdown was a sign of a new dictatorship.
The events in Vilnius and Riga are in no sense the results of the line taken under the powers of the president. Some people are using these events to talk of a so-called swing to the right or a danger of dictatorship. I decisively reject these suggestions.
Mr. Gorbachev said the shootings would be thoroughly investigated and seemed to suggest that the army may have acted on its own initiative, something he said must not be allowed. With the world blaming him for the deaths in Vilnius and Riga, Mr. Gorbachev is attempting to rescue his credibility as a liberal reformer. He hasn't acceded to hardline demands for the imposition of direct rule in the Baltics, but neither has he made an outright condemnation of the army's actions, and he'll have to act resolutely to prevent the further use of force if he's to substantiate his claims that dictatorship is not on the cards. The troops that most hold responsible for the killings in the Baltics are still present in Latvia. These rare pictures of the widely feared Black Berets, glimpsed inside their Riga barracks, reflect the ruthless fanaticism of a force which now seems to be out of the Kremlin's control. An obvious pride in their fearsome firepower, coupled with an obsessive desire to avoid identification, have made the Black Berets a powerful political weapon, which is increasingly doing the bidding of hardline local communists, determined to overthrow Latvia's elected government. Martin Sixsmith, BBC News, Moscow.
Now back to tonight's main news, the Iraqi Scud missile attack on Israel. We've just received more pictures from Tel Aviv. David Loyne has been watching them come in.
A Patriot anti-missile missile launched in Tel Aviv this evening. It goes behind the clouds, apparently hitting an incoming Scud. 2 other Patriots follow, but the American defense system, which has been so effective in protecting Allied forces and the people of Saudi Arabia, is not perfect. There's an explosion. And a few seconds later, another huge blast. As a rescue helicopter comes in from the left, there are big plumes of smoke, not shown on camera, in the night sky from 2 locations. On the ground, the damage is extensive where the Scuds have fallen. It's an indiscriminate weapon crashing down on a residential suburb. The exact location kept secret by Israeli military censors. This is the crater left by the Scud missile as it landed, around 3 meters wide and 2 deep, causing extensive damage for hundreds of yards around. There was no warning. Fearing gas attacks, many Israelis anyway have been staying in sealed rooms in their flats rather than going to basement shelters which might not be airtight. But it makes them more vulnerable to a direct hit from a Scud. Tonight, it was not a chemical attack. Iraq has used no chemical weapons in this war yet.
It hit a neighborhood, approximately 2 buildings in that very vicinity were destroyed as a result of that missile, and we now guess that we have around 60 casualties.
My child was under the wall just fell on her. She's just alive. It's a miracle that she's alive right now.
But in considering military reaction, Israel's deputy foreign minister says we should act with our heads, not with our hearts.
And a short time ago, the Israeli ambassador to London was asked if Israel was going to retaliate for the attack.
Very good question that we ask ourselves, we ask the world. We exercise tremendous restraint before and after. We had all the justification, moral, military, and political, to preempt his attempts to strike at Israel, but we refrain from, and in fact, we pay the price for it. We make it very clear. It is a duty and responsibility of the government of Israel to defend its population, to remove the danger, and frankly also to consider punishing Saddam Hussein, because if shoplifting is punishable, such a crime is doubly so. But there is no change in the policy of the government. We are determined on our right of self-defense, how to exercise this right, in what action, timing, etc. It is for the government to decide.
Within the last few minutes, Labour's Foreign Affairs spokesman George Robertson gave his reaction to the Iraqi attack.
This is a disgraceful, another disgraceful